Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Peter47890 Sasaris, and I have my good friend Shintai here to do a special discussion talking about the Dark Souls series. Thank you for coming today, Shintai, and how are you doing this fine afternoon?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me. I loves me some Souls, so I'm happy to be here.
Anyway, the Soul series. What can you say about these series of games? The Soul games have pretty much become like the Ninja Gaiden of the RPG world, which is to say that these games have been popularized by its brutal difficulty like Ninja Gaiden have in the action game genre, and it is to the point that Namco has even made its brutal difficulty a selling point in its marketing with the catchphrase, "You're going to die," on not only the advertising they put in the Dark Souls series, but also on the cover art itself. But is the difficulty really the only distinctive thing in the Soul series? I would probably say no, and I think Shintai would probably say the same. And so we're basically here to tell our experience with the Soul series itself, as well as what we think make it stands out among the other games that have came out, as well as some other interesting tidbits like what's our favorite Soul games, favorite bosses, and other stuff like that. So for the first question we're going to answer that I asked, firstly, what was our first foray into the Soul games? For me personally, it was Demon Souls. I've heard about the game's difficulty, so I thought to try it out on my PS3. And at first, I stopped at Bavaria Castle for some reason. I can't remember why I stopped there, but I took like a few months hiatus on that game, but then I came back to it, I stuck to it, and then I beat it, and I really love my time with Demon Souls. It's still become one of my favorite PS3 games to this day even still. How about you, Shintai?
Actually, it was Demon Souls as well. It was a game that I was really interested in before it came out, and unlike a lot of people, I actually played it before it was officially released over here, because at the time I was working for a video game website and they got me an early press copy. So I actually got to play it way before anyone else did. And I remember like when I very first played it, I was just like, what is this game? It's so weird. It was totally not what I was expecting. And I couldn't have like the same safety net that other people did, where if they got stuck somewhere, like, oh, they could just look it up in a guide. I was playing it before there were any guides. So I was like especially lost and especially just like, what the fuck is this? So that was a bit of a hurdle for me when I first played the game. But eventually I came back to it with like a different mindset, because I think I was playing it wrong. And I was playing it with the wrong mindset. And then I came back to it, and I changed my perspective on the game and how I approached it. And then I was able to make progress, and then I was able to start, like, it started to click with me, and I started to get it. And I was like, okay, now I'm starting to understand this game. And that process was actually, like, it was very unique for me. And it's something that really stands out for me, is like just this interesting experience that I had with Demon Souls I've never had with any other game. So yeah, I think I had a pretty different introduction to the Souls games compared to other people.
Like me, I just heard because that was difficulty and like, I want to buy this. I like difficult games, as some people in our group like to point out. Anyway, next question. How many games of the Soul series have we played? Me personally? All of them. Probably. Let's see. Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2, and Bloodborne. Am I missing? Okay, Bloodborne isn't technically a Souls game, but it's in the same style, kind of, basically.
You never played Kingsfield.
No, and I beat Demon Souls, Dark Souls once. I played through New Game Plus in Dark Souls 2 for some reason. And I played Bloodborne through 3 times, I think, with different builds each time.
God damn, that's fucking impressive.
No, 2 builds. I beat in Bloodborne. I got my first character through New Game Plus 2, and I got my other character through New Game Plus 1. And my first character was in a melee build, and my second character was in a Blood Tinge build, basically, for Bloodborne. How about you, Shintai?
I've only ever beaten any of these games once. So I've beaten Demon Souls,
Okay.
beaten Dark Souls. I'm actually almost at the very end of Dark Souls 2. I'm very close to the end. Just to give you an idea of where I'm at, I'm like right after picking up the ring that allows you to go through the doors that say produce the symbol of the king. And through one of those doors I defeated like a boss fight that was actually like 2 bosses. So I'm like, I think I'm pretty close to the end. I'm not like in the last area, but like I'm getting there. And I own Bloodborne, but I've played it like very, very little because I want to finish Dark Souls 2 first.
And believe me, it's been quite a trek for him. Well, in terms of his Twitter post I've seen.
With Dark Souls 2, yeah. We'll get into that later, though.
Let's see. Okay, next question. The elements that make the Soul games stand out among the slew of games that come out the past few games. There are many elements, I think. Like how its atmosphere, how it tells its story through item descriptions, and how it lets players figure out their own conclusions with the item descriptions. The brutal difficulty. But I think the thing that stands out to me the most is the level design of Soul games. I really dig the level design of the Soul games. They reward you. They reward porn. You for paying attention to your environments, basically, to its fullest. Whether that be trying to find the right path, finding shortcuts, finding interesting items. It rewards you, or finding out traps beforehand. It rewards you for paying attention, as well as the game rewarding you for learning from your mistakes with the bloodstain mechanic. And that bloodstain mechanic only works so well because of the fantastic level design of these games. Because there is a thought pattern to how you should progress through these different and varied environments in each Soul games. And I think that's really the thing that stands out to me the most in the Soul games. Really is the level design. How about you, Shintai?
You know, a lot of people rave about the level design, and I'm not going to dismiss the level design in any way because I do acknowledge that it's great. But I'm just the kind of person that doesn't really focus on level design all that much. I'm more of a person that focuses really heavily on core game mechanics, and I feel that the core game mechanics in the Soul series are so rock solid that even if they come across simplistic at first, they're very difficult to master. And I think that's one of the things that does make it stand out, and because in that way it kind of harkens back to old school video game design, where that's where a lot of games back in the day used to be like even like Mario or Pac-Man or something like that. Those were games that were difficult to master, but they were easy to pick up. And even though like the controls in like the Souls games, they seem a little bit strange at first, it doesn't take that much time to get acclimated to them. And once you do, you're like, oh, these, it seems simple enough. But the more you play the game, the more you realize the layers of depth within the combat mechanics. And that's the thing that I think really makes these games stand out. Those core mechanics are so seemingly simple at first, yet there's so much depth that can be explored within those simplistic mechanics. And that's something that I've just really loved about the Souls games.
Yeah, I agree too. Because that, I play a lot of strategy role-playing games in my youth, so I really keep an eye for level design, just because of having played so many strategy role-playing games through the years.
I think that's one of another thing that does make the Souls series great, is that they do so many things so well that depending on what your inclinations are as a gamer, you're able to latch onto those aspects of the game and get a lot out of it. Like if you are a person that doesn't really care about that much about the gameplay, but you love lore, like you just have this obsession with lore, then Dark Souls is really going to satisfy that need, or that
itch.
That itch that you have, because there's so much lore, there's so many things to figure out, there's so much things that you can find, and and there's different ways of interpreting things. So I really feel that the Souls games, there's just so many different things that they do so well that they appeal, even though at first the Souls games feel like they're only appealing to specific gamers. That's not as true as you might think. Because there's so many things that the Souls games do that that different types of players can really get into those different elements, even if it's something as simple as the atmosphere. The atmosphere is so rich in these games that it really feels like you've been transported to this completely new world, this foreign world, and it's so immersive in that respect. So yeah.
Okay, next one. What elements of the Soul games draw so many players to it?
I think I just said that already.
Yeah. Said it probably. You answered that question.
Well, I did, but let's hear your thoughts.
I think part of it is what you said before. I think also part of it is that the Soul games doesn't hold your hand like some other games nowadays do with its tutorials. It trusts you to basically learn on your own, and there are some instructions in terms of there being like messages on the ground, but it doesn't it isn't in your face like some other game tutorial is, and which I think players appreciate.
I think the best way to put it is that it respects your intelligence.
Yeah, it does. Right. What elements of Soul games still draw you to it? Again, the core combat mechanics like Shintai said, level design like I said, and it's just the Soul games are all overall really well put together games, I feel, in terms of gameplay, visuals, atmosphere, and even the weakest game of the series, which we're going to go into, is still a good game, I feel. What do you have any more thoughts to add about that, you think?
Yes. Like I said before, I'm a very mechanics-focused person, and I get a lot out of those mechanics, but at the same time, one of the aspects of Dark Souls that does keep me coming back to it is the lore. When I first play these games, I actually don't pay attention at all to the lore. Like, when I very first play through them, I just kind of go through them, I play through them. I may notice a few things here and there, but that's it. But then after I finish the game, that's when I become interested in, like, okay, well, what did such and such mean? What did this mean? What was the significance of that? So, when I'm actually playing the game, it's the mechanics that are basically what is driving my experience, but what gets me to come back is the lore and figuring out, or researching and finding out how the world works, and the character stories. And another simple thing is just the simple fact that the games have so many secrets. When I went through the game Dark Souls my first time, I looked up some stuff, and turned out that I fucking missed entire areas. These huge areas, like Ash Lake. I had no idea that was in the game. And I was just blown away by that. I was just like, what are these areas? I've never been here before. That's insane. So, I think there are a number of things that can keep you coming back to these games.
Favorite game in the series? This is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you answer first, Shintai? I still have to think about this.
First Dark Souls.
First Dark Souls?
That being said, I do acknowledge that the first Dark Souls is technically an unfinished game, as Miyazaki himself has kind of admitted, and Demon Souls is a more complete game. Like, that game definitely feels like it was more finished than Dark Souls, but I just had more fun with Dark Souls.
I would probably say Demon Souls or Bloodborne, really.
Interesting. Why would you consider them better than Dark Souls 1 and 2? Well, more so the first one than the second. I mean, I haven't played Bloodborne, but I'm gonna guess that Bloodborne also probably feels more like a complete game.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's really hard. I might say Demon Souls just because it was the first game for me, and it was the most memorable because of it.
That's understandable. But I thought you would have stuck with Bloodborne because you beat it 3 times.
I know, I beat it 3 times. And in terms of saying it might be Bloodborne as well, is because I think the overall atmosphere of Bloodborne is much more interesting to me than Dark Souls, just because it has that Lovecraftian atmosphere to it,
and the Victorian setting.
Victorian setting, which makes it really, really interesting. And I think it was able to take what makes the Soul games interesting, and does it well, but in its own unique way as well.
I have to say, even the little bit that I played of Bloodborne, the atmosphere that permeates through that game is so palpable. Like, I feel like I can cut it with a butter knife. Like, the atmosphere just feels so thick and rich and dense.
And that's only the beginning. It gets much more interesting in the latter half.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Like, yeah, it is a beautiful game. It's just amazing to look at.
So either Demon Souls or Bloodborne. And I would also say Demon Souls probably has one of the most memorable bosses for me, which is why that game still sticks so much to my mind right now. And speaking of our favorite games, weakest game in the series, Dark Souls 2.
Yep, Dark Souls 2.
Now, unlike some other people in the fan base, I would say that Dark Souls 2 isn't a bad game. It's still a good game. It's nice level design, still, but it has nice atmosphere too, I think, kind of. But its problem is that it tried to implement elements from both Dark Souls and Demon Souls, but the execution isn't stellar, to say the least.
Yeah, it's a bit questionable.
I mean, there's some elements I think it does fantastically in terms of combining both gameplay mechanics from both Dark Souls and Demon Souls, which is to say, I think how they implement like in the first Demon Souls, if you die, you lose 50% of your health. But in Dark Souls 2, when you die, you only lose 10% of your health, which I think is a great move because it really does allow you to feel more consequences to you dying in Dark Souls 2 in comparison to Dark Souls 1, where you only lose your souls, which is a setback. But I don't think Dark Souls really captured. It didn't really capture the feeling that you really do have to pay attention to your environments like Demon Souls did. But I think Dark Souls 2 was able to do that, but make it a tad more fair than Demon Souls was, with how it just basically took away 50% of your health from the get-go, which was really, really punishing.
Yeah, I'd say Dark Souls 2 managed to find a
Yeah.
happy medium. And I have to agree, I didn't really like how in the first Dark Souls it was basically just, whatever, you died, you lost your
I
souls,
know,
and
yeah.
that's pretty much it. And you lost your humanity too, to be fair. But I never really liked the humanity system, because it can make you, like,
I
stupidly
know.
overpowered.
You could just farm it.
You could just
You could just farm it.
yeah, you could just farm it, and for some reason, it scales your stats and makes you super fucking strong. And I'm just like, why?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I never really cared for that. And I think it was very good of Dark Souls 2 to just say, no, that was stupid, get rid of it, and bring back the system in Demon Souls, but kind of tweak it a bit so it's not quite as punishing. And it's like, yeah, you lose some health, but it's not
No,
half.
until you die like 5
And,
times.
you know.
But the maximum is only 50%, I think. Yeah.
Right.
Which makes it really fair.
Yeah, I think that
But
works
for
really
every
well.
good mechanic that it implements, there's 2 mechanics that are very questionable. Like weapon durability. Why is weapon durability
Yes.
so low in Dark Souls 2? I mean, the weapon feels like they're made out of paper with how fast they break in that game, which can be really annoying for no apparent reason.
Now,
too.
I need to ask, did you play the vanilla version, or did you play the Scholar of
Vanilla.
the First Sin? Did you ever play
No.
Scholar of the
No.
First Sin? No. Okay, because I think in Scholar of the First Sin they improved it, because I remember a lot of people complaining about that, and I've only noticed my weapons break occasionally, like once
Okay,
in
they
a
might fix
while.
it.
So
Kind of.
So it seems to me that it was addressed in Scholar of the First Sin.
Another one, and this is one that you couldn't believe, Shintai, when I told you it on Twitter. How you have how your invincibility frames is tied to a stat. What?
Yes.
Just what? Why?
I hate this mechanic. I just think it's bad game design.
Yeah, it is.
It just creates this sense of unreliability.
It just feel like an extra stat they want to add in. Just
I remember
for sake
someone
of
tried to argue with
adding
me,
it in.
and
If
they didn't do a
it
good
is
job
like
of
that.
convincing me, because like, oh, if you
think.
just raise the stat, your dodging only gets better. Because here's the problem. When you raise the stat, yes, it makes sure you're dodging better. Fine, whatever. But the problem is you don't really get a good grasp or a good sense of how much better. It's such an it feels really abstract to tie a number to the effectiveness of your rolls. And even then, like, let's say I had to raise my agility up to like 115 or something like that for it to feel more like the roll from Dark Souls. And even then, sometimes when I do a roll and I get hit, I know I didn't reach the maximum stat for agility, which I think is like 130. I'm not entirely sure. So it just makes me think, okay, did I get hit because my agility stat isn't maximum? Or did I get hit because of a buggy hitbox? Who the fuck knows? At least in Dark Souls, if I get hit during a roll or something, weird like that happens, I can very clearly and plainly state that was my fault or that was a buggy hitbox. For sure. Because the rolls are static and there isn't going to be any weird discrepancy between the rolls and what I did and what the game is calculating, because the rolls are static. So it's just a weird mechanic too. I've never heard this for any game ever. Can anyone please tell me of any game that has ever tied a stat to invincibility frames? That's just fucking bizarre.
I also tried to like what was the most difficult boss for players in Dark Souls, which was the Orstein and Smog, basically. And they tried to replicate that again, and again, and again, and again in Dark Souls 2, which gets really, really boring. Because
yeah, I agree. But enough with like bad bosses. I think I'm interested in talking about the next question.
Okay. Favorite bosses in the Soul games. For me, I'd probably say King Alent and the final boss in Bloodborne.
Cool.
And to add to that, I think the humanoid bosses in the Soul games are probably the most challenging and probably the most fun.
I would agree.
Play, probably, yeah. And King Alent and the final boss in Bloodborne was just really, really fun bosses to me. And King Alent especially because I played as a royal in Demon Souls, and I basically had like a magic / melee build, but my magic was basically useless against King Alent because he was so fast and I couldn't get a cast in that I had to basically learn how to fight him melee. It was. And it took me a lot of tries to get his pattern down, which I did. I even got a YouTube video of me fighting King Alent with a rapier on my YouTube channel, though that was like years ago. But yeah, just because of that different dynamic of having to learn how just to melee him, that makes it really memorable to me. And what makes the final boss of Bloodborne memorable, I want to say it was Shintai hasn't beaten it. I haven't beaten Bloodborne, so I don't want to say who it is. But basically, you know, the Bloodborne has weapon changing, right? With the different weapons changing to different weapons.
Yes.
He basically does that too, which makes it really interesting too to fight him.
Cool.
And he's probably the only boss that does that. There are normal there's like enemies types and normal enemy mobs that does that, but I think he's the boss. He's the only one boss that does this, which is really interesting how they do it.
So, for my favorite bosses, I think just not because the boss itself is great, but one boss I really like just from a pure visual standpoint is the Gaping Dragon in Dark Souls, because I also really love its introduction where it just peeps out its little head and it's like, oh, it's not a big deal, and then it just creeps in this giant body, and then you see it expose its like teeth and rib cage thing or whatever, and it's just like this monstrosity. It's just like, holy shit. It's so cool looking. The actual fight itself is not that great. No, it's not a bad boss, but but
they're more better bosses, better designed bosses, I think.
Right.
Than Gaping
Once
Dragon.
you figure out how to beat it, it's not that tough. But like when you very, very first fight it, and you see that introduction, and you see its design, like I remember playing the game, I felt like I was paralyzed in fear. I'm like, I don't even want to fuck with this thing. I don't want to get near it. This is gonna kill me. So, just based on that experience and just the way it's designed, it's so cool. Like, it just really stands out to me. But,
I think people would find this interesting. Shintai one-shot Orstein and Smog.
Oh yeah, I beat them. I didn't one-shot them. Like, I didn't kill them in one hit, but I did beat them on my first shot.
Motherfucker.
It's very interesting. A lot of people talked about like how difficult the fight was, and like I remember one friend of mine was like, "No fucking way you beat him on your first shot," and I was like, "What? Yeah, I beat him on my first try." And
which I think makes, which is an interesting point, that each boss in the Soul series are designed in such a way that it can be a unique experience for each player, just based on how they play it too. Which is interesting, I think, since my favorite boss might be somebody else's least favorite boss. Which I think really speaks volumes of how greatly they design the bosses in each Soul games are. Except Dark Souls 2.
And speaking of the next question, least memorable bosses.
Can I say all of Dark Souls 2? Mostly. Because, like I said before, they basically for most of the bosses, you're only fighting a replica of another one. They're not even unique for some of them. They're basically the same enemy type, but you have to fight two of them. Like Orstein or Smog, which did have distinct patterns to them, which you had to figure out.
I think
the patterns...
Go ahead.
Yeah. And patterns weren't even all that difficult to figure out, like for King Alent or the final boss of Bloodborne, which those bosses were my favorite bosses. But there was just so much fun trying to figure out how they fought, what's the best way to attack them. That made them my favorite bosses. But for the Dark Souls 2 bosses, it's pretty easy to figure out how they fight. The only problem is if you have enough agility stat to properly roll through them. That's really the most difficult part of figuring out how to fight the bosses, really, I think.
So, I think the least memorable boss, unsurprisingly, coming from Dark Souls 2, is this. I don't even remember the name, but all of the boss fight was it was some priests, and they had I think they were like possessing some other enemies.
Oh, Covenant.
Yeah, and that's all the fight was. It was just like killing these priests, killing these other pygmies, and it was just like, wow, that was a waste of fucking time.
Bogtown. Part of it is the frame rate, because I put up Dark Souls just because of the frame rate, but mostly because I don't like poisons in video games, and that game is basically poison the game with how you progress through the game. Like, you better have those antidotes because you're gonna need it if you want to go through this area. And it wasn't a visually interesting area to me as well. It was just an area like, okay, it's a swamp. Yay.
I like Blighttown, to be honest. Like, yeah, the frame rate sucks, but I actually do like the design of it because it just feels so dirty and decrepit and rotten, and it just feels like this filthy place. You just feel dirty just being in.
What is your least favorite area then?
Lost Izalith. Fuck that place.
Why? Because of the ghosts?
No, you're thinking of New Londo ruins.
Oh, New Londo, okay.
Lost.
Oh, you mean the
place with the lava.
Place.
The
yeah,
lava.
The lava place,
oh my god, just the lava blinds you. Like, that alone makes me call it the worst place. Traversing the lava, that like it. I felt like the brightness of the lava was like searing into my eyes. It was terrible. Fuck that place. Ugh. Oh, so bad. And then they sprinkle in all those dragon asses all over the place.
Yeah, that was painful to fight.
They're not even like full dragons. They're just like dragon legs, and like you're not even really meant to fight them. If you try to pick a fight with them, they just stomp all over you. The camera goes insane, and you can't see anything. It's just bad. And I think that really is, like, that place in particular is just how reflective of the fact that that game is not done. Like, that game was not finished. And it really is a shame. Because
I think I can see what that feeling you get when I was first going through the Lost City of Azalith.
It did feel like they wanted to do more with the area. Like, it did feel like there were things that I'm pretty sure, like, if you ask Miyazaki, he would say like, yeah, we're not really proud of that area. It wasn't finished.
It does help that the boss for that area wasn't that fun too.
Oh yeah, Bed of Chaos. We talked about least memorable bosses, but I think we can agree that the Bed of Chaos is the worst boss fight in Souls. I mean, as kind of some of the boss fights in Dark Souls 2 was, I would say that I would take all of them over Bed of Chaos, which is just a fucking chore. It's just this bleh fight. Did you know that while you're sliding down at the start of the Bed of Chaos fight, that Bed of Chaos can use the Firestorm spell on you while you're sliding down when there's nothing you can do about it? And there were even some instances of people going into the T-pose. The T-pose, where your character just stands there with their arms spread out, and then they're stuck there.
I know. It's not. I don't think it's a well-designed fight at all. I think it's something they wanted to do because they thought it would be an interesting idea, but the implementation wasn't there, I think, for Chaos.
I think, like, again, the game's not done, so I'm pretty sure, like, they probably had, like, grander ideas for the fight that they just could not finish, and they could not get it in a working order, and it's just kind of left in this shitty state.
Areas we love and dread at the same time. What we mean by this is that this is an area in Dark Souls that we dread, but we also love because either it's environmental design, how a memorable thing that happened there, stuff like that. For me, Andor Londor.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
I love the look of Andor Londor. It's just so grand when you first go into it. This city. It looks great when you go into it, especially when you're exploring Andor Londor too. Not only on the outside, but the inside, well, in terms of going inside one of its cathedrals. But there's one moment I dread in Andor Londor, and I think people know what I'm talking about. Those freaking archers.
One of the most bullshit moments.
So, I think another area that I love and dread at the same time is in Bloodborne. And is it Nightmare or Frontier? Nightmare Menses or Frontier? It's either Nightmare Menses or Menses Frontier. I'm talking about the area where you basically get frenzied if you're out in the open and have to use cover to get from point A to point B. And I think that's really unique how they did it. In that it really does go with the Lovecraftian theme. And it's really memorable to me, I think. How about you, Shintai?
Shrine of Storms.
Oh, Dark Demon Souls.
Yes, Demon Souls.
Okay.
I really like this area because the look and feel of it is very different and very cool, and it really does feel, even though it's not raining or anything like that, it really does feel like you're in this area that is affected by the weather, and it's got really cool enemies, and the boss fight is so fucking awesome, especially if you're not a magic user and you can use that sword to shoot out the energy blasts at it. It is fucking cool.
Really? The manta ray?
Yeah.
I use arrows.
Well, I use that sword because it's conceptually that's just awesome. You get this sword, you're shooting out energy beams at it and shit. It's cool.
I think I didn't have the stats to carry that sword, I think, then. So I had to use arrows and soul arrow. Like, God damn it. More arrows! I'm out of arrows! More magic!
But the reason I dread it is because the skeleton enemies in that place are fierce. They will like roll up to you and slash you in your face, and man, they don't fuck
man.
around.
I take those skeletons over the skeleton dogs in
the Tomb of Giants.
Yeah, Tomb of Giants.
Ah, those things are the worst.
I know. You're like, hey, I see other things. That's not so. Why is it on all fours? No. Yeah.
That is like one of the cheapest enemies. It's so unfair because it's fucking huge. It's got this enormous range. It's
so fast too.
It's really it's fast and it does so much damage.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck these things.
I know.
Like I had to put off that area until like pretty late into the game because those enemies were such a pain.
Mm-hmm.
I had to beef up my character before I could just go in there and just mow them down.
Okay. What type of builds do we go for in each of the games that we did play in the Soul games? Let's see. Demon Souls, Royal, so which it was a mix of melee and magic. For the second one, strictly melee, sword and shield to be exact. Dark Souls 2, I went broadsword, as well as doing a magic build too, which I think I did I think I did just a magic build. I didn't do a faith build or hex build. Just strictly magic, like soul arrows and stuff like that. For Bloodborne, I did a melee build, and then I did a blood titch build, like I said before.
In Demon Souls, when I very first played the game, my character was a little bit of everything, except for magic. He didn't use magic. But like he was the class I picked at first was a knight, but he could also use like a few of faith stuff, and he could heal himself, and he could use bow and arrow. But he was mainly speaking, he was focused on like being a melee character.
What weapon?
Straight sword.
Oh, okay. Straight sword and shield then. Okay.
Yep, pretty much. In Dark Souls, I learned from my mistake of like having the character also use magic or like even faith or stuff like that. Not really a good idea. So I just stuck with a straight up melee build that uses archery as kind of like a supplement. I started off favoring the Drake sword for a long period of time, and then I switched over to the lightning spear, and then I switched over to the Quelaag Fury sword, and I just stuck with that for the rest of the game.
That's the sword I used in Dark Souls. Woot woot, Quelaag Fury sword master race.
It's so fucking good. Yeah. And currently in Dark Souls 2, I started off with straight sword, and I stuck with that for a really long time. But then I got the black steel katana, and that's what I've been using.
Oh, okay.
And I pretty much stuck with that. And again, similarly, this character, because of how high your dexterity stat needs to be in order to use the black iron katana. And similarly, actually, with the Quelaag, you need high dexterity with that as well. My character is also really good with bow and arrow, so I guess in that sense, I lean more towards like a dexterity build, but focusing more on the melee than the bow and arrow.
Okay. Yeah, and you just basically do the standard melee build for Bloodborne of what you did play of it?
I played so little of it, like...
Okay.
Yeah, it's not even really a build.
Okay.
I didn't even get as far enough to like level up.
Okay. One last question then that I just remembered. Do you think that the Soul games is as punishing as Namco or other people makes it out to be? No. Now don't get me wrong, they are difficult games, but the point where people say, and even Namco themselves say, how difficult the game is, I think it's overblown.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay, let me get one thing straight. When I'm talking about not being as difficult, I mean the base game, not New Game plus 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 plus, and all that
Yes.
jazz. In this base game, I think they're difficult games, but if you keep at it, anybody who can play a high fast paced action game can get through Dark Souls, and Bloodborne if they can if they're comfortable with RPG elements too, like knowing how to allocate your stats wisely, knowing when to save your items, when to use your items, stuff like that.
I feel that the two things you need more than anything else is time and patience.
Yeah.
If you have those two things, no Souls game is out of your reach.
It isn't out of your reach like some final bosses are. Try to get 3 final bosses! Anyway, that's all for the discussion.
Actually, I do have one thing I want to add.
Okay.
A lot of people make a big deal about how challenging the Souls games are. And that is true, they are challenging games.
But I think it's a byproduct rather than something they aim for.
Sure, but
yeah.
the point that I want to make is, I think more than being challenging, I think the games are punishing more than they are challenging.
Yeah.
Because the actual things that you do in the games, yeah, they can be difficult, but think of it this way. Let's say whenever you died, you didn't lose all your souls. Would people be making as much of a big deal of how hard these games are? I don't think so. I think if you kept your souls whenever you died, people would just say like, oh yeah, it's kind of hard, but it's not like impossible or anything. The fact that you lose your souls, which is a really important commodity in the games, that's what gives people that like, oh no, I lost 100,000 souls. No. See, and that's where all of that frustration comes from, because you really feel that sensation of loss, of over your hard work being, wasted. So, the games are much more punishing than they are actually difficult. Even though they are difficult. I'm not trying to say that they're not, but I do feel that, again, if that part of the game was absent, well, one, it'd take out a pretty big portion of the game. I'm not saying it should be gone. I like that it's there. Mm-hmm. Just that if it wasn't there, I don't think people would be making nearly as much of a big deal about how hard these.
Yeah, I'm just saying in terms of pure difficulty, Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 2 isn't as hard as people are making out to be. They're hard, but still manageable if you got the time and patience to it.
Like, I consider me platinuming Bayonetta, I consider me beating Metal Gear Rising on Revengeance to be something more braggadocious, something much more worthy of bragging than I beat Demon Souls or I beat Dark Souls.
I beat Revengeance on Revengeance mode too. Yay!
Shit's fucking hard, isn't it?
Well, unless you know how to parry, which makes it easier, kind of.
Yeah, especially if you're using Jetstream Sam's sword.
I know that's getting off topic.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah,
that's something else.
Anyway, I think that's all we can. I think that's all the questions we're going to answer for this Dark Souls discussion. Thank you for coming here, Shintai.
No, thank you for having me.
And this is Peter 47890, that's Cyrus, signing off.